Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel as you saw its name in that new intro. This time we're taking a little break from LEGO videos and instead focus on the game that first kicked off this channel, Little Nightmares. And wow, it's been 5 months and 13 episodes since I last fully covered this game in my first video. And as I'm recording this is my second most viewed episode on my channel. First being the Treasure Raiders LEGO set review. I get that since the game came out 1 year and 7 months ago, the Little Nightmares fan base is pretty much dead at this point, in which most of the people who were speculating about the game have probably lost interest of it and moved on to something else. So you may think it's pointless to talk about this game now, but since I still like this game and this is my channel, I can do whatever I want. And if you forgot about this game, this video could be a refresher for you. But anyway, now that that's out of the way, we can get into what this episode is about. So as I said in the My Love for Little Nightmares video, this game is filled with many things that we can speculate about. This is my first Little Nightmares theory video, and what better way to begin a series of videos like this without talking about Six, the main protagonist of the game. And yes, her name is spelled S-I-X and not the number 6. In order to find out who or what she is, we'll first have to follow her on her journey throughout the game. Then we'll get into other details about this character. Also, by going through the game, we can examine details that can lead into future theory videos. Now without further ado, let's dive into the world of Little Nightmares and see what awaits in the darkness. So as the game begins, we are greeted with a short, dark cutscene. As the camera zooms in, we see a tall, skinny woman wearing a mask turn to face us, and with a startled jump, our protagonist awakes. Well, I guess Six had her own little nightmare. Okay. With that long overdone joke aside, we are playing as a little girl wearing a dirty yellow raincoat named Six, as heard before. And we can now get up and examine our surroundings. This is Six's home. She has a suitcase that she sleeps on which functions as a bed. Up top we see clothes hanging off a clothesline, which I'm pretty sure Six never wears them because they're obviously too big for her and too high to reach. And lastly, there is a 1 barrel and a few tin cans which would indicate that Six has a supply of food and water. Now, when we look back at the suitcase, we see photos taped on it. This would indicate that Six has been living here for at least a while. And if we were to assume that this is an average sized suitcase, then that will mean that Six is very tiny when we compare the two. Her actual height has not been confirmed, but it's assumed that she is around 12 inches or less. So after Six gets up, she begins her journey by walking down a hallway and comes across a few of these little gray creatures with pointy hats called gnomes. And since the hallway is dark, Six uses her conveniently tiny lighter to light the way. Okay, now I'm going to address something that's important for the story. Six is on this vessel which is called the Moth for probably a good amount of time judging by the previously mentioned taped pictures. The gnomes are one of many other inhabitants on this vessel. Six's objective is obviously to get the hell out of there. Even though the game just begun, a few questions have already been raised. First off, why does she decide to escape now? Has she tried every day without success, or was she just bored of her living area? Second, how did she get to the mall to begin with? Was Six born here or came here from somewhere else? Another question is that, why is Six wearing a raincoat if there isn't any water to be seen? Is it the only piece of clothing she has? And lastly, where did Six get that lighter? She's obviously too young to smoke, so we could come to the conclusion that Six either got the lighter from someone else or she found it and used it for her own good. Anyway, after leaving her home by going through a ventilation shaft, 6 walks up a one staircase, and from here we can see a glimpse of just how big this place is. This also brings up another question. Why do these stairs appear to be perfectly her size if earlier we saw how small 6 is when we compared her with the suitcase? Maybe these stairs were made for us or for someone else like the gnomes. This would also suggest that the mall could be made for people with different sizes. 2 rooms later, 6 comes across a tall, skinny man who appears to have hung himself. Judging by the chair and envelope below his feet, he presumably committed suicide. However, 6 has no reaction to this, which would suggest that she has already been here before. Another detail we can see is that the envelope hasn't been opened yet. This would mean that we are the first to find him, and the reason why 6 herself hasn't opened it may be because she might not know how to read. So about that hanging man again. We don't know his name, if he had a role in the mob, or why he committed suicide. Not a lot is ever explained in this game. Hell, there isn't even a single spoken line of dialogue to be heard. But let's continue on with 6's story, shall we? After she opens the door to the right, she finds herself in a dark room with some kind of black, inky substance on the floor with footprints leading away from it. When 6 reaches higher grounds, we see that the black substance from earlier was left behind by these creatures called leeches. Though unlike most leeches in real life, these can move on solid surfaces, appear to have legs which they can use to stand up, and can stick to the ceiling to wait for their prey. They can also somehow produce this ink, since they are usually around them as seen here. The leeches are the first enemy that 6 encounters on her journey, and they come in large numbers. I don't want to go too in depth with these minor enemies, so I'll make a separate video covering them in greater detail. After escaping from a literal leech trap, 6 makes her way through more rooms until she gets to this point. Up top we can see something with long arms walking across a bridge while dragging behind what appears to be a cage, but before we can examine it more, the thing walks off into another area and the door closes. More of that later. In front of us, we see a makeshift rope made out of sheets coming out of a barred window. This was definitely some kind of escape scene, but who exactly left this rope? Did 6 leave this trail, or was it someone else? I know that in the DLC we do get an answer to that question, but that's a video for another day. 6 climbs up the tower rope and finds herself in a bathroom which leads into a children's playroom, but it's completely deserted of any kind of children or anything else. The entrance to the bathroom and playroom's exit is even blocked by electric bars. On the floor we can also see an ashtray with a few cigarettes around it. Okay, first off, why would there be an ashtray with a few cigarettes sitting in the middle of a children's playroom? Did developers just randomly place it there, or do the children actually smoke? Second, why are there electric bars blocking both entrances? Are the people running the mall really willing to hurt kids who are trying to escape? That sounds cruel. We'll come back to these questions soon enough, but we first need to carry on with 6's story. So after 6 finds a way to turn off the electricity and leave the playroom, she walks down a hallway with many wooden doors and then walks into a large room when suddenly a seemingly mechanical eye on the wall turns on and shines its light while looking around. If we are directly in the eye's gaze, we get turned into stone. In the room, we can even see some petrified kids in horrified poses who failed to escape and got turned to stone. So I guess the mall appears to have more ways of keeping kids from leaving than just electric bars. I mean, the bars weren't really the best at their job as we saw with 6, so the security eye is another option they have. Anyways, after 6 gets past the Medusa eye via hiding behind the debris in the room, she goes up another floor and we have the option of either going left or right. We're gonna go left first because there are still some details in that direction that should be noted. So on the far left hand side of this floor, there's a room with a single twin-sized bed. This of course shows that the wooden doors lead to minimalistic bedrooms for the children. In this particular room, there's a porcelain doll in the center which is actually one of the collectibles in the game. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention in the My Lovable Nightmares video that there are collectibles in this game, but I digress. Under the bed we could see some of that black inky substance again, which implies that there were leeches here. Holy crap, just imagine sleeping with death lurking below you. That sounds terrifying when you think about it. On the wall, we could see that a kid or multiple kids used the ink substance from the floor to draw an illustration of an eye. And underneath the eye there are many childlike handprints. These details prove that these bedrooms have abhorred living conditions. I can't imagine how they are even able to sleep in these rooms. So when we proceed right like we are supposed to, Six finds herself in a dark nursery with beds that have children sleeping in them. Suddenly, as we keep going, the door behind us mysteriously slams shut by itself and that long-armed thing from the bridge comes inside. See, I told you we'd see him again soon. So this thing is actually a person who works on the ship referred to as the janitor. He has long arms, short legs, and an oversized head. He is also blind, but makes up for that by having really good hearing. He walks around the room reaching his long arms around the area to see if there are any vermin running loose while Six hides under one of the beds. The janitor is the first major enemy that we encounter in the game, and from when we first saw him on the bridge and later as we come face to face with him helps build suspension is overall a great way to introduce this guy. The janitor is also my favorite character in Little Nightmares. Once he leaves, we can now examine the sleeping kids in the beds. Now it's unclear if these are either infants or kids our age, but from what we've seen so far, they may be involved in some sinister operation. I believe we'll find out later. Six then leaves the nursery and ends up in another room. Suddenly, she appears to get extremely hungry and loses all her energy to do anything. Six then slowly walks by a cafeteria with barred windows and luckily a silhouetted child behind the bars gives us some bread and Six feasts on it. Hold on. If there's a cafeteria for children and earlier we saw a nursery, bedrooms, security eye, and playroom, are these kids being held here for years? Allowing them to grow up and do something later? There appears to be more than meets the eye here, but don't worry, we'll find out soon. Another question is that why is there only one kid in the cafeteria right now? Shouldn't there be some kind of schedule for a number of children to go and eat here? And lastly, why does Six get this hungry now? Surely those cans of food from her home should have given a decent amount of energy, right? So either time flies really fast during the game or Six just gets really hungry really fast. So after Six gains back her strength and leaves the room, she finds herself in a huge room with stacks upon stacks of cages and lockers. What the hell are these cages for? And what kind of society would need this many storage units? They appear to be close to our height, so we could assume that they are for kids or gnomes. This possibility is confirmed since here we could see a gnome locked up in a cage, and in this dark room, if you look closely, you can see some kids in the cages. Well, at least we got an answer to that question. Six then makes her way past another security eye, across a bridge that splits apart, and walks through a large door with a few gnomes. After that you get an achievement called The Prison, marking the end of the first chapter. That name of course explains things like the barred cafeteria, the small bedrooms, the playroom, and the escape scene. It's obviously a prison for children. However, we hardly see any kids in this place. Just keep in mind I've already gone through 5 pages of the script and we've only covered 1 out of 5 chapters in this campaign. So let's hope there isn't too much to go into detail in the later chapters. So after we go through the large door, Six walks up a massive staircase that actually looks reminiscent to the one on the title screen. When she makes her way to the top, Six enters a brightly lit room which is very likely the janitor's living quarters. Not only have we not seen any other larger person on the mall so far, but the furniture in the room is tall enough for him to use his long arms, and there is a portrait of the janitor placed prominently on the center of the wall. There are many other pictures on the walls. We can see that some of them are that of gnomes. This can mean that either they have an important role on the mall, or the people who work here have some kind of admiration with the gnomes. Hell, it could be both. However, these pictures appear to be old, so it's possible that things may have changed over time. Six then leaves the janitor's quarters and goes down an elevator. On the lower floor, Six goes through another hunger pain, and her only option to fulfill her hunger is a piece of raw meat in an open cage. This, of course, happens to be a trap set up by the janitor, and we get captured in the process. So now Six is trapped in a small cage within a room filled with other kids from the prison also trapped in storage units. Six quickly busts out of her cage, which makes me question why none of the others have escaped yet, and in another room, we see the janitor take the bodies of children, wrap them in paper bags, and then places them on a hook attached to a moving rail. Now it's unclear if these kids are either still alive or dead. But is this actually why the children are brought onto the mall? Well, what happens to them after they go through being in the bags on the rail? And is there more tasks the janitor has besides this, raising the kids in the prison and patrolling the prison? Wow, this got pretty messed up only at the beginning of the second chapter. After Six gets away from the clutches of the janitor and falls down a shoe pit, she crawls through vents with shoes and even comes across a room which is a literal shoe pit. This is very reminiscent of photos from the Holocaust that show nothing but piles of shoes from the people that died in concentration camps. There seems to be some kind of genocide happening on board the mall, but who exactly did these shoes belong to? I think we'll find out soon. Oh, and there's also some kind of monster in the shoe pit that we need to avoid. Now the rest of this chapter doesn't have anything else too noteworthy. Most of it consists of Six avoiding the janitor in his lair. This part of the mall is where he mostly resides in, and the janitor has collections of objects such as toys, grandfather clocks, and even an entire library. Later in Six's journey, she gets chased down by the janitor through a hallway when suddenly, the doors begin to close and Six barely manages to slide underneath one of them and into another room. The door wasn't fully closed because of the cage under it, and the janitor reaches his long arms through the narrow space to catch Six, but she manages to pull the beams off the cage, which results in it losing support and the door fully closes, cutting the janitor's arms off in the process and somehow opening the hatch on the right. On the other side of the door, we can hear the janitor wailing in pain. This is such a satisfying way to end this chapter, but at the same time, I can't feel bad for doing that. Six then goes through the open hatch in a ventilation system, and we get an achievement called The Lair. From this point on, we never encounter the long-armed janitor again. Well, in this campaign at least. So after Six crawls through the vent, she comes across the meat on hook system that the janitor was working with earlier and takes a ride on it by hanging onto one of the empty hooks. She travels across a massive ravine, and up top we can see a different person looking over the ravine while smoking, and then it walks away into another room. When Six makes it to the other side, she lands on a mountain of body bags and then goes through the third hunger pain. This time she devours a live rat that got stuck in a mousetrap. So we went from eating meat that wasn't alive to something that was alive. Also, in these rooms, we see large metal crates filled with more body bags and even a pile of empty body bags. At the end of the rooms, there's a blood-stained path that leads to the door, which leads to a kitchen. It's now very evident that the mall is killing children and using them for food. I guess that means the people running the mall are cannibals. unless they're not human. Once in the kitchen, 6 finds herself in a small storage room filled with food and other ingredients. So why didn't she just skip on the rat and keep going until making it in here to eat the good stuff? I guess 6 couldn't keep up at that point of time. In the next room, 6 runs into that fat person from the balcony, and he's a chef that cooks here. The chef is at this table chopping up some meat, and 6 has to avoid him. 6 then enters another room where we could see all kinds of kitchen related stuff. There are stoves, ovens, cooking pots, more food, and also some more gnomes. The door to the right is locked, so 6 has no choice but to go up and find the key. While we're up top, crouching across the wooden beams, we can see large fish being hung up, such as swordfish. I don't know what fish these are, please point it out in the comments. Even at least 2 or more sharks. Or those could be tuna. Also, the chef from below has noticed us and does not do anything about it for some reason. So how exactly did that one chef get these fish up here? He doesn't have long arms like the janitor did, and I don't see any pulley system around here. That's just something that bothers me. Over on the left, 6 climbs up some cages and enters another room. Once inside, 6 finds herself in a bathroom with 2 toilets. After that, she walks into a corridor with an elevator in front of us, a couple of pictures on the wall, and another door to the left. It looks like we are in some kind of residence. It could very well be the chef's, but who knows. 6 enters a dark bedroom with 2 twin-sized beds right next to each other, and there's another person sleeping in one of them. When we hide under the beds, the person wakes up, turns on the lights, and we find out that he's actually the twin brother of the chef from downstairs. The only difference is that he has a different facial expression. Once the other chef leaves, we can now freely examine the twin chef's living area. Directly above their 2 beds, we can see a photo of half of the 2 chefs' face right next to each other. There are other things in this bedroom, but they aren't as important. 6 finds the key to the door from earlier, heads back down using the elevator, makes it past chef number 1 again, and unlocks the door on the right to proceed forward. Now, just like the last chapter, this one doesn't really have anything else too noteworthy. 6 comes into contact with things like a sausage making machine, meat freezer, a meat slicing room, garbage chute, and lastly a dish cleaning room. But there is something in particular about the twin chefs, and it's that they appear to be wearing masks. Not only do their facial expressions never change no matter what happens, but in this section, we can occasionally see the second chef scratch his face underneath the mask. Another thing to point out in this chapter is that with it taking place in the kitchen and all the food being cooked right now, it seems like the chefs are making food for a lot of people or some other beings. At the end of the chapter, 6 makes it all the way to the dish cleaning room. The twin chefs try to stop her, but she manages to get away by taking another ride on one of those hooks on the rail system before it crosses over a large gap. Once she makes it across, she lets go of the hook, lands on a pipe, and goes through a crack in the wall. We then get an achievement called the kitchen. Sometime later, 6 comes out of a pipe in the wall and lands on a larger pipe. As she keeps walking, we can hear seagulls chirping and hear some heavy machinery in the background. Also in the background, we can see huge chains being operated. Once 6 starts climbing up a conveniently sized ladder on the far right side of the area, we even see some water flowing down on the walls. When we climb to the top, 6 goes through a bright circular opening, and for the first time in the game, we finally make it outside. Our yellow raincoat protagonist is now at the very edge of the mall. From this view, we can see a vast ocean, and directly next to the massive vessel, there is a regular looking boat where we could see some fat people boarding off of the boat and onto the mall. So as 6 climbs up the side of the ship, we can see just how huge and weirdly designed the mall is, and on the side we can see more water dripping down from the top. Oh, and there is at least one seagull present here, but soon flies away. With all this water dripping off the surface of the ship, it seems like the maw has just emerged from the water. But is it always like a submarine? Who knows? Six then goes through another circular opening after she can no longer climb up and walks across a large metal beam. From here, we can get a better view of those fat people. Okay, these obese people are known as guests in the game. They come in an endless line and are clearly coming aboard this ship for a reason. Don't worry, we'll find out very soon. When we reach the end of the beam, Six continues through the maw instead of just getting all the way over there past the guests and climbing aboard the boat. I guess Six has more things to do on the vessel before she leaves? Maybe. Once Six heads back inside the maw, she sees the guests marching into an area with oriental architecture. Up top, we can see the same masked woman from Six's nightmare from the very beginning of the game standing on a balcony. In Little Nightmares, this character is known as the Lady, and from the way she's looking at the guests come in, looks like she's the owner or leader of this vessel. As Six continues on with her quest for freedom, we see that this is some kind of resort for the guests. The result of the twin chefs' hard work is a giant feast for the fat people. The guests are shown eating at tables and bars, shoving endless amounts of food into their disgusting mouths and drinking way too much wine. Whenever Six gets near any of the guests, they stop eating and get on the floor. The fat people then proceed to chase us down, and if they catch us, they will eat us. Which makes sense since they're probably eating other children too. A little later in the chapter, Six encounters one of the twin chefs from the last chapter in a corridor. She then gets chased down by the chef in a bathroom. Six hides while he looks around inside. The chef leaves and locks the door on the way out. The only way for us to get out is through a one-way mirror. And once we shatter it, we see that there's a chair behind it? Who would be sitting behind a mirror spying on people who uses the bathroom? Is this the lady's doing? Or someone else? Six proceeds to walk through the glass without getting a single cut or drop of blood, climbs up the bars behind the chair, and gets out of the room on top of a pipe. From here, we can see the chef chopping up some stuff in another room. But why is he doing this here? Shouldn't the chef be doing this in the kitchen? This detail isn't too important now, and we never encounter the twin chefs again. After Six uses the elevator on the other side of the corridor, she heads one floor up and goes to a room on the left. In this room, we get further proof that this is more like a resort than just a restaurant for the guests, in which we see a guest sleeping in a bedroom, so there are more things the fat people do on the maw, I suppose. So when Six leaves the bedroom and proceeds right, she walks down a hallway with sliding doors. Soon enough, those doors open and piles of fat guests quickly crawl out and begin chasing us. There are so many obese guests on Six's tail that they are wrecking through all furniture in their way. They even storm through all of the delicious foods on the small tables instead of eating it and ignoring Six. Our raincoat protagonist continues to run away from the stampede on a bar table, where the guests sitting at the bar also try to eat us. When Six runs to the other side, she jumps off the table over a large gap and barely grabs hold of a hanging lamp and makes it to the other side, finally safe from those obese guests. However, as soon as Six goes through the sliding door, she has another hunger pain. Well, it's been a while since she had one of these. I suppose the rat provided a lot of energy for her. As she continues to slowly walk down the hallway, she enters a small room where a gnome in the center of the floor kindly presents us a sausage. Aw, how cute! Now we could finally have something normal to eat for once. What? No! No! Please stop! What the hell just happened? How ironic that we ate someone that was going to give us food. But why exactly would Six eat a poor innocent gnome that offered her a sausage. Maybe there's a reason for this. So, after we eat the gnome, we notice that the light above us has been completely destroyed and Six fully regains her energy to do crap. As she continues, we can see the lady again stepping into an elevator. Shortly afterwards, Six also takes a turn up the elevator. After that, we get an achievement called the guest area, ending the chapter. And now we may cover the fifth and final chapter of Six's story. So this chapter begins with Six stepping out of an elevator and after going upwards. She's now in the lady's living area, and from what we've seen with the guest area being next to the entrance to this vessel near the surface of the ocean, it looks like this area is at the top of the mall. This place definitely looks more grand than the other locations from earlier. On the right hand side of the room there is a locked door which we may unlock sooner or later. On the walls we could see many framed pictures. One in particular shows the masked lady standing in the center of a photo with four tall, silhouetted figures standing beside her. Who are these four other people? Is that the reason why our protagonist is named Six because of the five figures? Or is this just a coincidence? When we enter the room on the upper level, we see the lady braiding her hair in front of a broken mirror while humming a quiet and calming tune. Six must sneak past her in order to get into the other room, and if she gets caught, we find out that the lady has some kind of magic powers, which is very unique from the other enemies in the game. Six then walks into the lady's bedroom. On the left side of the room, we see a picture of a little girl in a dress hung on the wall. Over on the floor, there's a photo of another little girl, but this one's wearing a raincoat and the picture is slightly covered by a sheet. Is this girl Six? If so, is the girl in the picture on the wall also Six? Could it even be a younger version of the lady? Or it could very well be someone else. On the dresser, we see a very noticeable looking vase with an eye symbol on it, which we've been seeing everywhere throughout the entire game. I guess the eye is the symbol of the maw. Six, of course, pushes the vase off the dresser, causing it to shatter into a million pieces. Right after that, we hear the lady gasp in shock and stops humming. In a pile of broken glass, there's a key for the locked door from earlier. As Six backtracks through the previous room while carrying the key, we see that the lady has mysteriously vanished, but we can still feel her presence. Nevertheless, Six comes back downstairs, unlocks the door, and enters a dark hallway filled to the brim with wooden mannequins. Some even have kimonos similar to what the lady wears. As Six begins to walk into the darkness with her lighter on, the door behind us mysteriously slams shut on its own and the fire from our lighter goes out. When we continue walking, the lady appears out of nowhere and begins chasing Six down. Luckily, she runs to the end of the hallway and slides through a gap near the ground to another hallway. We can also see some black particles coming out the gap. In the hallway, there appears to be more broken mirrors. Six enters a large room filled with even more mannequins. On the far right side of the room, there is another room boarded up by wooden planks. After Six gets in the room, we see even more broken mirrors. However, there's one single unbroken mirror lying on a dresser. Now why are a lot of the mirrors broken? Does the lady not like looking at herself? If so, why is this mirror still intact? It's probably the reason why this room's boarded up and why the key to this area was hidden away in the first place. Six picks up the mirror and heads back into the large room, where we see the lady standing in the center of the floor. She then slightly turns her head to look at us and then vanishes. Six runs to a lit area and proceeds to fight with the lady by pointing the mirror to her, which results in the lady getting damaged and then teleports away to a different side of the room. But why exactly would an unbroken mirror hurt her? Does this mean she's ugly, or is her power coming from her mask and can be reflected? I'd say the mask part. 6 repeats this process 5 more times, which, funnily enough, adds up to 6, and on the last one, the mirror finally shatters. The lady yells louder than ever, and then both her and 6 gets knocked out. Some time passes and 6 wakes up and gets up off the floor. She then goes through one more hunger pain and proceeds to slowly walk towards the lady, who has also woken up, but is laying on the floor badly hurt, and her mask is no longer on her face, but it's being covered by her hair. When 6 approaches the lady, she eats her. From doing this, 6 appears to gain some crazy powers as seen with these black particle trails coming towards her, and then the screen turns black. Shortly afterwards, we see 6 descending in a dark elevator. She arrives back at the guest area and proceeds to walk forward. As she walks, she destroys any light over her and kills any fat guest who gets near her by using her newly gained powers. At the same time, we get an achievement called the Lady's Quarters. 6 then heads towards a large door and it automatically opens for her, showing a huge set of stairs going up with a bright beam of sunlight shining down. She walks up the stairs and at the bottom, depending on your actions in the game, there are a couple of gnomes staring up at her. Our yellow raincoat protagonist makes her way to the top, walks off screen, and then the credits roll. However, after they finish rolling, we get one last scene where we see 6 standing outside at the top of the mall, looking over the vast ocean. Since we don't see any of that large metal structure from the beginning of the 4th chapter, we can confirm that some parts of this ship do raise up and submerge back down. As we go back to the main menu, we hear ship's horn blow. So I guess a book comes to pick up 6? Who knows? Whew! We finally went through the entirety of 6's story, but this video is still not over. We'll now go through other stuff about 6 in the game, starting with going over 6's appearance, and later her abilities and other aspects. 6 is a tiny child with a height estimated to be around 12 or 8 inches. She wears a bright yellow raincoat and for some reason she never lets down her hoodie. She also wears an underwear as seen here occasionally when 6 gets up after a game over. She does not wear any footwear and her limbs and body are so skinny that they look like they can easily snap in half. 6 also has black hair that mostly covers her eyes all the time, which would make her look emo. In fact, all the kids on the mall are emo. According to Wiki's Little Nightmares, 6 is presumably 9 years old, though this has not been confirmed. Now you may have noticed that throughout this whole video I've been referring to 6 as a she, and at the beginning of the video I stated that 6 is a girl. But the truth is that the developers of Little Nightmares have never confirmed what 6's gender is. However, in 6's description in the official Little Nightmares website, the character was referred to as a she, and in the interview where they say that they still don't have an answer to 6's gender, the developers still refer to 6 as her later in the interview. Because of this, pretty much everyone including me believes that 6 is female. In terms of abilities that 6 possesses, she can do the usual stuff like run, jump, and crouch. She uses her trusty lighter whenever it's dark and to light up lanterns and candles. But sadly, she never uses it for any other purpose and is therefore not important to the game's story. 6 has no other tools or weapons, but she can pick up other lighter objects and throw, push, pull them. She can't push, pull, or pick up heavy objects because she's too weak. Lastly, at the end of the game, she gets those mysterious powers that allows her to presumably suck the life force out of living beings. We'll go into greater detail about that later. For now, we will dive into Six's past and speculate about what it could mean. Nothing about her backstory is ever explained in the game, but when looking back at Six's description, it states that she belongs elsewhere. This suggests that she wasn't originally on the Maw. Her backstory is further explored in the Little Nightmares comics. So in issue 1, we learn that Six originally lived in an unnamed city populated by fat people similar to the guests from the game. During a rainy day out in the streets, she is trying to flee from the obese citizens but was spotted by a large man in a trench coat with a fedora and having a very droopy face. This mysterious character is known as the Ferryman in Little Nightmares lore. He then captures Six and brings her to the Maw. In the game, the Ferryman appears in a portrait scene a couple times, so I think we can confirm that this is canon. This backstory would also explain why Six always wears that yellow raincoat, since it was raining during the moment she was captured and was only wearing that coat. The scene of the ferryman would also explain how all the other kids in the prison were brought to the Maw, but still doesn't explain why they are brought here. Now there are still a few questions about Six that still need to be answered. Like, why is she named Six? Who are Six's parents? And why can't she do those weird, unusual things during the game? So what could be the answer to those 3 questions? Well, back when Little Nightmares was at the peak of its popularity, there was a really popular theory that stated that Six is the daughter of the lady and they both didn't really have the best relationship. This theory covered those 3 questions, and when looking back at it, evidence was pretty solid. It would explain why Six has a nightmare of the lady at the beginning of the game, why there's a portrait of a little girl in a yellow raincoat and a girl wearing a dress in her quarters. Oh, and during that moment in the 4th chapter where we're being chased by guests, you can even see a portrait of the lady standing next to a little girl similar to one in the lady's quarters. The theory also explains that the hanging man from the beginning of the game is, or at least was, the lady's husband and therefore Six's dad. Another thing about this theory is that it coincides with another popular theory that states that the lady is a descendant of the 4 other mysterious figures in the portrait. She would be considered the 5th one in her family, and that will explain the origins of Six's name. This theory would also explain where Six got those strange abilities, since she inherited it from the lady. However, in another interview with the creators of Little Nightmares, they debunked the theory, saying that they don't know how people see it as a mother-daughter relationship. And another thing that would disprove this theory would be how Six was originally in that city before coming to the Maw. And if she were the daughter of the lady, then how was she still living in that city before the events of the game? Luckily, the theory about the lady being the 5th in line from those 4 figures hasn't been disproven. Therefore, we can still use it when speculating. So, if Six isn't the daughter of the lady, then who is the little girl in the portraits? Well, there is another suspect on who that girl is, but I'm saving it for another video. This still leaves those 3 other questions unanswered, so let's try to answer them. In issue 1 of the comics, Six's backstory is being told while she is standing with a group of 5 other kids with similar hoodies at a fire. There's a good possibility that Six was given that name from those kids and being the 6th in their group. What about Six's parents? Well, when looking back at her backstory, we see that Six isn't accompanied by a parent, guardian, or any other adult figure. Because of this, we can infer that Six may be orphaned. But how did Six get those weird powers? Before she devoured the lady, Six still did similar things during the first 4 hunger pains. In the first 3, the lights around Six flickered, and in the 4th one where she eats the gnome, the lights above her gets completely destroyed, similar to what happens at the end of the game. There's still one other detail about those hunger scenes. We all know that they are already pretty disturbing on their own, but when we turn the camera, right then and there, we can see a shadowy version of Six, standing on the locker during the first hunger pain. In the second one, Shadow 6 is up on a pipe. In the third hunger pain, she is seen on one of the metal crates. In the fourth one, Shadow 6 can clearly be seen on the bar table, staring at 6. However, in the last hunger pain where we eat the lady, Shadow 6 is nowhere to be seen. But why is that? To me, I think this Shadow 6 is a manifestation of 6's powers, and during the first 4 hunger pains, the manifestation was there because 6 didn't fully gain her powers yet. That's why Shadow 6 isn't present during the 5th hunger pain, since 6 already gained her powers. But this still doesn't explain how 6 even got these powers to begin with. Well, I have my own theory for this. In the lore of this game, there are several beings with supernatural powers in the world of Little Nightmares. These include the leader of them all, the lady, and the ferryman, who could be working for the lady. And in the comics, which I'll cover in greater detail in another video, we see 2 more beings, which consist of the North Wind from the first issue, and the being in the mirrors from the second issue, who looks like the Hanging Man from the game. I believe that 6 becomes a new supernatural being that's similar to the one shown earlier, and I think the lady knows about it. But how these beings first got their abilities may be left up to our imagination. Now, there is still one more lingering question about our Yellow Raincoat protagonist, and that's why does 6 decide to escape the maw at that period of time? For this, I also have my own theory to explain this. The first thing in order to understand my theory is that in the Little Nightmares comics, which keep in mind are most likely the prequel to the game, we see 6 traversing through the kitchen. This means that from staying on the maw for a while, 6 was able to learn the ins and outs of this vessel. Because of this, other kids aboard the maw and the lady herself are aware of her presence. This could also be why we see a portrait of what may be 6 in the lady's quarters. So why didn't 6 escape as soon as she first discovered the lady's quarters? Well, here's the other part of the theory. When looking at the official description of the maw, here's what it says. The maw arrives every year, always at the same time, but never in the same place. It creeps and crawls and buries its claws deep beneath the glistening water, and there it sits in vast silence, waiting. Soon after, they start to arrive. The guests, the monstrous, sweating, hungry guests, all seems bursting, bodies bulging, eyes dead of boredom. They shuffle up the gangway and into the mouth of the maw, and then they are no more, for none of those that enter have ever returned to tell the tale. At least, not yet. That not yet at the end is obviously referring to 6 escaping the maw at the end of the game. And why is this description important? Well, let me explain. With the maw's description, we learn that the guests board this vessel once every year, and it's stated that after they board the maw, they are never to be seen again. So what happens to the guests? A popular theory is that the lady kills them the same way 6 did at the end of her journey. She would suck the life essence out of the fat customers. Remember that pair of shoes we saw in the second chapter? Well, when looking back at this scene, we realize that these shoes are too big for children's feet. In fact, most of the kids we see don't even wear shoes. Because of this, it's believed that these belong to the previous guests that were killed. What exactly happens to their bodies is still unclear. But why would the lady suck the life essence from the guests? Well, since the lady resembles a geisha, it's fair to assume that she is vain about her appearance, and is obsessed with trying to stay young. In order to do that, the lady would kidnap children, kill them, make the guests eat their meat to sprinkle in some youth, and kill the guests to gain their youth inside of them. That will explain why the lady kidnaps children and has them killed. But what does all this have to do with 6's motivations to escape? Well, allow me to explain that. I believe that 6 planned to make her escape on the day of the guests arriving that year. I mean, it can't have been coincidence that she wanted to leave on a day that just happened to be the moment the fat people come, right? 6 chose that period of time so that she would escape and fully gain her powers, and since she already knew how to navigate the maw, 6 was able to easily make it to the top. So now that we've gone through all of the important stuff, we will now cover the main campaign of Little Nightmares as a whole. So the Maw is a large ocean vessel that's both a prison and a resort. The owner of the ship is the Lady, a geisha-like woman and a descendant of 4 other people. She is vain about her appearance, and since she was fleeting over time, Lady had to find a solution to the problem, and that solution she found. The Lady hired a ferryman to capture children from land and bring them to the Maw, where they would stay there for some time and be raised by the janitor. Later on, the kids would get taken away by the janitor and sent to the kitchen. After that, they would be killed by the twin chefs and used as meat for the great feast along with other food. Probably the reason why we hardly see any kids in the prison during the first chapter is because most of them were rounded up for the most recent feast. Once every year, the guests board them out to eat this feast and relax at the guest area. Soon after, the Lady swoops in and sucks the youth out of the guests, keeping herself young for a long time, and repeating this process every other year. However, among the many kids that were taken to the Maw, there was a particular little girl, and she was in the beginning of becoming a very powerful being. The girl was given the name 6, and learned the layout of the Maw over time. She then waited for the day the guests come so that she could escape and become the being she truly is. 6 did everything in her power to make it out. She dismembered the janitor, ate a poor innocent gnome, kills the Lady by reflecting her powers of an unbroken mirror and feasts on her to fully gain her powers, kills the guests by also sucking their own life essence, and ends up being the only person to ever escape the Maw. Because of her actions that she does throughout the game, many people believe that 6 herself is the true villain of Little Nightmares. Although it's unclear if the other characters have evil intentions or not. Overall, 6 is a very interesting character. Although it's unclear if she's either the protagonist or antagonist of the game, we still can't deny that the journey she goes through is very memorizing and memorable. With so many interesting things that are still left for us to speculate, this is an adventure that I'll gladly revisit for countless reasons. And that's my first in-depth look at Little Nightmares, a game that will forever have a place in my heart and something that I'll continue to make videos about. This video was originally planned to be uploaded back in September before the video about my birthday. It wasn't mostly because I was sometimes lazy, but because this video took so long to make. The script for this video ended up being 18 pages long, and was by far the most difficult script I've made so far. Editing the video also took a while. Editing in general is not hard, it's just time consuming. The voice acting was not easy because of how much I had to work with. Oh, and this was my first video to have background music. I know I could have split the video in 2 parts, but I decided to go against that because since this is my first video where I go fully in depth into something, I wanted to experiment with this and see if you prefer me either going through everything in one shot or dividing things into parts. I'll let you decide. I'm very proud about how this video turned out. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed. Join me next time in my upcoming videos about LEGO once again. And be sure to also subscribe and click the bell to get all notifications. Goodbye!